Hello and welcome to Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on a Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. Our guest this week is Taylor. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me, Sam.
All right, well, to start out, the script you decided to have us load in is The Ones You Least Expect by Taylor and myself.
Seemed fitting.
We did draw out tokens. You drew out the damsel token, which is especially spicy.
I did.
So, what would you like to claim?
What am I gonna claim as the damsel?
Yeah.
I think that I'm going to claim to be the artist, and I'm gonna use my question on day one, and then I'm not gonna push to be executed. But if somebody nominates me and says, "Hey, you've used your ability," you know, I won't fight too hard against it.
Fair enough. Have you ever played the damsel before?
I could pull up my spreadsheet and check. I don't think I have, though. I don't think I have had the pleasure of being the damsel. I've been the huntsman a couple times, though.
Fair enough. All right. Well, so Blood on a Clock Tower. How long ago did you discover the game, and how did that go about?
I discovered the game probably in a very similar way that a lot of people discovered the game, and that was in 2021 with No Rules Barred. And their videos, I started watching them basically at the beginning. I don't think I watched their content before this. I think that it just ended up in my YouTube recommendations. I became addicted with the game, watching it, thinking about it. And that was the case for about 6 months until it hit me. And I was like, oh, I wish I could play that game. I wish I had somebody to play with. And I had the thought in my head, maybe there are people who play this game that I could seek out. And so in January of 2022, I did a little Google. I found a Reddit thread where somebody recommended Dice Tower Werewolf, which is a group that has very little to do with Dice Tower and very little to do with Werewolf nowadays. But that's where I met a bunch of really cool people like Viva La Sam and started playing the game myself.
All right. Do you remember what your first game or several games were like? Like what those experiences were like?
I do remember we were very much on the Zoom side of the Zoom versus Discord. Uh, any new players who are used to the app, it's so wonderful. But back in the day, we were, we had to have somebody with a Zoom account. To be in every game, you'd be trying to run a game and messaging people to figure out who has a Zoom account that can give it to you. I remember I was pretty nervous because I was new to the game, but I was excited because I had been a fan for months and months, and I'd been thinking of all these strategies in my head of like what I would do if I played the game. So I was very excited, and I specifically remember my first game. It was Trouble Brewing, and I drew the Slayer token, and I didn't fully know what was happening. But on day three, somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I think your neighbor Brandon is the demon." So I remember making a big spectacle of it in the day, and I said it with a lot of confidence, and I managed to Slayer shoot the demon. So honestly, I can't think of a
Amazing.
more addicting first game where I'm like, "Oh, every game is gonna be like this. Wonderful."
Amazing. So maybe that was the point, but was there a point do you remember being hooked on the game for sure? Like, oh yeah, I want to keep playing this?
I think that the first hook was definitely that. It was definitely the rush of getting to use my ability and working with town to figure out who I should, use my ability on. That was very exciting to me. I think honestly, the thing that's kept me coming back and back to Blood on the Clock Tower is just it's two things. The first is the amount of diversity in how the games run. There's a million different ways Trouble Brewing can play out, and then you have 100,000 other scripts, and all of those scripts run differently every time you play them. Like that's very intriguing for me. And the other thing is just the diversity of what I can do in the community. So, I started playing for a while, and then the next thing for me was, oh, I want to learn how to storytell. And so I put a lot of effort into that. And then, oh, I want to learn how to write scripts. And so I put a lot of effort into that. And so even on a day where I don't feel like playing the game, maybe I feel like running it. And maybe a day where I feel like writing a script, that's something I can do instead of running a game. So it gives me kind of diversity. If I'm not feeling like lying to anyone, I can just run a game, and I have to do way less of that. So that's what really hooked me, and I love storytelling, script writing, playing. I love all aspects of it. So that's just the cherry on top.
You mentioned having a spreadsheet. Do you have an idea of how many games you have played overall?
Yeah, so I have my spreadsheet. I didn't start it right at the start, but I'm on around my 230th game recorded on my spreadsheet. It's probably more around 275, 300 if I add them all up, and then I've story told over 100 games. So playing and ran, it's around kind of the 400 mark, which might sound like a lot to some of you, and might sound like not a lot to some of you. I know players in the thousands, but I'm quite happy with the level I'm at, and I don't expect to be stopping the game anytime soon.
How often have you been able to play in person?
I've actually only played in person 3 times. It's something that I first got to play. There's a group in Toronto. I'm a Canadian. There's a group in Toronto that plays pretty frequently. I found out about them about a year and a half ago. And so me and Lynn, who's a member of the community I play Clocktower with, we went in person and met up there. I was the mayor, but we won on like final 7, so I didn't get a mayor win. And then I spectated the second game because I didn't have much time. And then there's actually a group local to me that was running games for a while, and I thought they stopped, but they're still playing. So I joined them a few months ago for a couple games. One where I was the demon and got a win in person, which was cool. And then just a couple weeks ago, a bunch of people from our kind of local community came up. So we had somebody local in terms of who I usually play the game with. We had somebody drive up from 15 hours away to
Wow.
play some Clocktower, have a steak dinner, even though I don't eat steak. So yeah, those are my 3 experiences. They've been really fun. It's a way different way to experience the game, but I try to just treat it differently than how I treat it online. I'm not trying to keep track of everyone's bluffs and all of that. I just kind of go, how am I socially reading people? What's the information I'm being given at the time? So I appreciate it as a new experience and a new way to play the game.
How often do you get to play currently, whether online or in person?
Typically, I play the game at least once a week. In our community that we're in, there tend to be pickup games on Monday nights. I run a weekly game of Clocktower on Wednesday nights, so I story tell pretty much weekly on Wednesdays. And then every chance I get, I like to pop into Viva La Sam's Friday games. Friday, I'm a little less available, but sometimes I manage to make it out there. I probably would be playing a lot more if I was able to keep track of a whole bunch of different Discord communities. I think just with my mental state, it's hard for me to kind of keep track. I've joined a million Discord groups, and I struggle. So I tend to kind of just play in my community. I used to play on the TPI streams, and I actually have done some signups for next month. So maybe I'll be back on there a little bit, because now I'm kind of more free on the days they're doing them. So hopefully going to be playing a little bit more.
Cool. So, kind of thinking about the progression as somebody who's brand new to the game, you play a bit, now you're kind of intermediate, and then you play a bit more, and you're, however you want to call it, experienced, whatever that would mean to you. What do you think that transition was like for you? Like, how would you describe that?
I think that the transition from beginner to intermediate to experience, I think it really depends on how much of an introvert or an extrovert you are. In reality, I think that this game is great because if you are more of an introverted person, there's lots of room in games. And I think it's great to have a diversity of different player types. There's room in games for people who sit back, observe, take in information, and then act on it, when they think it's appropriate. And I think for some of those players, I think that the transition comes a bit with some confidence inside of the game, in terms of getting more in the driver's seat in some games. I think for me, I had an easier time with that transition because I'm a very outspoken person. Even my third game, I was telling people what I thought my worlds were, even though most of them were wrong at that time. It helped me develop my skills at building worlds. So I think it was kind of easier for me because I was sort of in my first few games. In my mind, I was like, I've been thinking about this game for months, so I'm already an expert. And then I look back at how I played the game then, and I cringe a little bit, but yeah. So I think the transition for me was a little smoother than some people because I already had the mindset that I was great at the game.
Do you have any experience with any other social deduction games?
I think my only experience with social deduction games is at Baptist camp playing Mafia. Um, I think that is maybe a universal thing. Although I've brought up Mafia to a few people, thinking that everyone would know what that was, but I've gotten some mixed responses on that. But Mafia is basically a super simple. It's a simpler version of Werewolf, basically, and it happened a lot at church, even though it had to do with killing people in the night, which was a bit strange. But I loved it. I enjoyed trying to figure out, who was killing me. I don't know if I ever was in the mafia. I don't have any memories of that, but I remember that there were a lot of worse games that we were playing. So whenever Mafia came out, I was very excited.
All right. So when you sit down to play the game, you're waiting to draw your token. How do you feel? What are you thinking?
I am a very emotional player, I think. I think that I really play with my heart. So no two games are really the same for me. It sort of depends on, kind of the mood I'm in the day. Now, I try not to bring, like negative things about the day into games with me. But, if I'm feeling more excited that day, if I'm feeling more reserved that day, it does kind of change how I want to play the game. When I'm feeling more energetic, like I have a lot of energy, I haven't done much that day to really, slow me down. I'm very much thinking about, all right, what's on the script? I'm thinking about what I want to put in my threes, whether I'm good or evil. I think, okay, what's a good combination of bluffs to give? I think about who I want to talk to. I kind of see who's in the game. So I try to just kind of take a grander look at it. And yeah, I think that no two games do I go into them the same. Um,
So you draw your token. Do you prefer it to be red or blue? You like being good or being evil?
It's weird. I think that I prefer being good generally just because I take this game very seriously. And if I'm good, that means that there's several other people who are working together for the same goal. Whereas if I'm evil, a lot more of the responsibility falls on me to win the game. Which honestly, sometimes I enjoy. There are times where I draw evil tokens and I'm ready to go, and I gained a bit of a reputation at one point for being good at evil, although recently I feel like my evil win rate is decreasing for whatever reason. um, I prefer being good. I really like solving the puzzle. I like putting worlds together. I like hearing other people's worlds, inputting that information, finding flaws in them and alternatives, and that's something you can really only do on the good team. So that's where my heart lies. But I will say that the rush of winning the game as evil is typically a bigger rush than winning the game as good. If
Oh,
I can be in a position where I'm evil and I think I'm losing absolutely, and I manage to pull it off, I feel better after that than most good wins. So it's a balance there.
Always pretty much say about the same thing. Always say that I prefer being good, but winning as evil is more exhilarating.
Absolutely.
So, what kind of characters do you like to play, whether they're good or evil? Do you prefer maybe a more passive character? Do you prefer a character that gets information or does things?
I think that typically I prefer playing more active characters. I like characters where I'm getting a bunch of information that I can piece together. I like characters where I have room for collaboration. If I'm something like a soldier, I have incentive to talk to people insofar as I can get their information. I can see if I trust them or not. But I'm not actively, it's not giving me an incentive to go and talk to people. If I'm the fortune teller and I'm getting yeses or nos on players, let's say I'm the fortune teller and I got a no on you, Sam. That gives me a guide for the next day. I go, all right, Sam is someone I know is not the demon. Let me go talk to them. And it opens those paths. And then maybe what you say leads me to another path and I'll go down that. So I like a character that leads to collaboration. I also feel the same about a once per game ability. Like if I'm the Slayer, I love being the Slayer because I get to talk to people and say, "Who are your suspicions?" And then I can kind of make a list of how would you use this ability and put that all together. Those are my favorites. I do think I would love being the Goblin though, just because I don't get a lot of opportunities to sort of play Outed Evil. And the times where I try to play Outed Evil, I never get nominated. So I think it would be cool to have a minion that I could just cause chaos. So that's probably my one exception to that rule.
What are some of your favorite characters you like to bluff as, whether you're good or evil?
Characters I like to bluff as tend to be once per game or passive abilities, despite what I said in the previous answer, because there are there's a lot of benefits that come with giving out a bunch of information and leading town down false worlds. That's definitely a skill, and I've seen a lot of games go very well for evil because they're able to uh, dictate the direction of the game based on a chef number, based off of fortune teller info, empath pings, and that's a really great skill. I think for me, the way that the reason it doesn't work as well for me is a different part of my playstyle. When I'm evil, I fight like heck to stay alive. I know there are a lot of players that are very more nonchalant about dying, and for a lot of reasons, and I understand, and there are lots of actually good game reasons to want to die early, gain trust, things like that. But for me, when I'm in the game, I want my vote. And I want to stay in the game as long as possible. What that means is if I am bluffing fortune teller and we are on day 6, it means I need to have a congruent list of 6 pieces of fortune teller info. God forbid the one time I bluffed Savant and made it to final 3. Um, it gets a lot for me to juggle. So because I like to be in the game for long periods of time, I tend to go with roles where either I can do something early and kind of bluff that, or have a passive ability that I can sort of uh, sit back and say, hey, well, the reason I'm not giving a lot of worlds is because I don't have a lot of information of my own to help with.
But how do you feel about madness in this game and the various characters that interact with it?
I like Madness. I think that there are a lot of very interesting Madness based characters in the game. I think that some of my favorite characters in the game are actually Madness based. The Pixie, in particular, I really like. It gives a lot of room for players to double claim each other, which is useful cover for evil, but also useful for town on the right scripts. It can be a really great get out of jail free card. It also leads to very interesting mechanics and situations where maybe you have an ability activating multiple times in a game, and sometimes at a crucial time later in the game, which is very interesting. Mutant is also one of my favorite characters because when you draw a token like Mutant, it really gives you an opportunity to have fun. And I know there are some people who probably would draw the Mutant token and get stressed out about it, but I think my main takeaway for Madness is When I am mad, I use that as an opportunity to have a good time and play the game differently than how I would. Because if I have to claim something I wasn't planning on claiming, then that's naturally me playing a game in a way that I wasn't supposed to. And for some people, if you have information that you're trying to get out there, but you can't because you're mad, that can definitely be frustrating. But I think it's interesting to have a mechanic in the game where it forces you to think outside the box. It forces you to make plays, say things that you wouldn't normally say, and maybe you learn a few things along the way. Also, from a storyteller's perspective, I like Madness because it is a mechanic that has built into it a lot of agency. If there's ever a time where it's not fair to kill somebody for a Madness break, pretty much every character that I can think of, I have the agency to make that decision. So that gives me a lot more peace with the ability, because it's never a 0 to 100. There's a lot of gray areas in it.
All right. Well, thinking about scripts, and let's start with the base scripts. Which one is your favorite?
I think my favorite base script is Sex and Violets, because there is an infinite amount of things that can happen. And that's true of every script. It absolutely is. But there have been games of Sex and Violets that have blown my mind in ways that even some custom scripts have not led to. I've had games of Sex and Violets with 4 or 5 different people who have been the demon by the end of the game. And that's a base script. And I think that's maybe what I really like the most about it, is that it's built well enough to be a base script, but there's so much potential for just craziness. I love a good game where things go off the rails. I also love, and this is something I love more about Blood on the Clocktower in general, is because there's so many different iterations, there's so many different characters that can interact with one another, there's so many different outcomes. It means that in a lot of games, you see things happen that are big coincidences that are hilarious. And I love finding those coincidences. I love, a player says some joke about something that happened and that actually happened. Things like that. And Sex and Violence has a lot of potential for, throwing out crazy worlds, and then you get to the end of the game and you're like, oh, the Snake Charmer did jump and then get barber swapped, and then there was a Fangu jump the next day. All of that's possible, and I love it.
Is there a base script you like the least?
I don't think so, honestly. I know there's a lot of hate for Bad Moon Rising, and I've definitely had a few Bad Moon Rising games that have gone on for a long time. I think, if anything, my only complaint with Bad Moon Rising isn't really a complaint on the script, it's more a complaint on my ability to schedule. I think that if I'm playing a game of Bad Moon Rising, I need to carve out more time. It's a script where it could be short or it could be a while. But I think a lot of that also comes down to storyteller. I think that
Yep.
if you are creating a balanced game, if you are making, smart decisions, if you are keeping your players moving at a decent pace in nominations and discussion, then I think there's no reason why a game of Bad Moon Rising can't be an incredibly compelling, thought-provoking time. And I think that Bad Moon Rising, this is what they say about the script. This isn't a brand new thought of mine, but it really is a different kind of script than Trouble Brewing and Bad Moon Rising, because it takes a lot of actions to learn things. You could play a game of Trouble Brewing, not execute for 4 days, piece together the empath and the fortune teller and the slayer and the raven keeper info, and you could potentially find out who the demon is. That's not going to fly in Bad Moon Rising. You need to be killing people, you need to be using abilities, you need to be testing abilities, and I like that. I like what it brings to the game. So no, I don't have a worst favorite, because Trouble Brewing is perfect, Sex and Violence is amazing, and Bad Moon Rising brings something really new to the table. So I will have no slander of the base 3 scripts. I think they're all very well made.
Fair enough. And I'll refrain from getting on my soapbox about storytellers and how long they take to run Bad Moon Rising. So thinking about custom scripts, what do you look for in a good custom script when you're playing it, or are there things you like, things you don't like?
Yeah, this is something that really is really important to me. When I run games, I tend to run custom scripts. It's sort of what I enjoy doing the most. And I know there are other people who run beginner friendly games, and that space is, there's a lot of players that are doing that. So I wanted to have a space where you can join my games and get a character you've never played with before. That's where you come to my games for. So custom scripts are, very integral to that. I spend a lot of time finding them. Find a lot of time making them. When I'm looking for a custom script, there's a few different things I look for. I look for balance. I look for how strong is the evil team versus how strong is the good team. I look for fun. Does it look fun? Just a glancery term. Also, are there fun characters to play? Because there are a lot of scripts that are well made, but maybe the characters, it's a bunch of townsfolk that you might not be excited to draw. I like scripts where they make it work with characters where you draw the token and you think, great, like that's something I haven't been before, or that's something that I can play a different way, or I'm excited to see how this works in the script. So I like that. I like the fun factors. It's something that players are going to want to do again. Is it a script that when I'm done, players are going to say, all right, that was interesting, but can we go do catfishing? Or can we go do something else? Replayability. And then there's the obvious script building 101s you want to look for. Are there a million ways for evil players to be created? You want to look for a decent amount of outsider manipulation. You want to look for a decent set of bluffs for evil, depending on what tokens are in the bag. So all of that kind of come together when I'm looking at scripts.
All right. Well, I like to ask about a certain set of characters that I think could be considered to be divisive. So
I'm
I'm
so
curious to
ready.
get your opinions on a few of these characters. Let's start with the only base character on this question list, Snake Charmer. How do you feel about Snake Charmer?
I love Snake Charmer. I think that Snake Charmer is one of those tokens. Some people are different. Everyone has their preference, but Snake Charmer is a token for me that when I draw it, I'm excited and a little scared, but I'm excited because there are two ways that a snake charming can go. Either I pick four people and I know those four people I'm never going to vote on as the demon, and that's useful info. Snake Charmer is an incredibly powerful role. Or I'm going to pick the demon. You know what? There's a decent chance I'm going to lose. However, it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be a lot of fun. The next day, when there is a snake charming in a game, the next day is always fun. Because somebody's always smiling, somebody's always trying to get town's attention that they have an announcement, and usually the other snake charmer, the person who became the demon, they will go back and forth with them. It's it's a great amount of fun. I think that some of the times I've heard the most laughter in a game has been after a snake charming. So you either get a lot of info and it's fantastic, or there's a snake charming and you get a great laugh. I think snake charmer works a lot better mechanically when there are certain roles to help. So if I become a demon after snake charming, if I have a pit hag, that's useful because it's possible, maybe I'm turned into a Fangu and I jump that night or the night after, have an escape plan. If I snake charm and then there's nothing on the script to hide me, and there's no way I can't star pass, I can't do anything like that, it can be a little harder to actually win. But there are roles that you can put in the game with Snake Charmer to make it so that Snake Charming is not the end of the world. Big one being Leech, because if I Snake Charm you and become the Leech, I have a great chance of winning, actually.
So how do you feel about Poppy Grower, especially being evil in a Poppy Grower game?
I have been the Poppy Grower twice. Um, the first time I was puzzle drunk, so I did nothing. which was interesting. I think that when I got that token, this was about a year ago, I was still a little nervous about the game, and I was in my head, and I'm like, I have to do this right. The good team is counting on me.
Mhm.
So I was very cagey with everyone, and I only talked to dead players and told them the truth. Um, and then it got to the end of the game, and it turned out that it didn't matter. So maybe that's a lesson that if you think that the entire game rests in your hands, sometimes that's not the case. It's a social game. No one wins or loses a game on the back of one person. So I think if you draw the Poppy Grower token, you don't have to think that it's the end of the world if you die or you get caught out or anything. The second time, I was actually the apprentice Poppy Grower, um, and that was very fun because it gave a new dimension to the Papa Grower ability because I could be voted out at any time. I think it's a good role. I think that it's incredibly powerful. My biggest hot take about the Poppy Grower is that I do not think that if one is poisoned or drunked when they die, I think that evil should learn each other. This is my biggest uh, hot take about the characters in this game. I don't know how you would do it, whether you'd make a change to the wording of minion and demon info altogether, if you make the Poppy Grower undroisenable like an ogre. I'm not sure, but I think it's unfair if evil accidentally poisons them, kills them, and then their own ability has hurt them in the long run. That's my Papa Grower hot take.
I think that is probably one of the colder Poppy Grower takes, and something I know a lot
Well,
of people
it's
are
the one I
hoping
feel
will
most
change.
passionately about. I'll
Fair
say it
enough.
that way.
Right now, the Pandemonium Institute's in the middle of doing game rules updates, and maybe we'll see an update with Poppy Grower. Maybe that'll be a part of it. Who knows?
Best day
If
on
that
earth
does
for me.
happen, it might have happened before this video comes out. Guess we'll see. All right. So, how do you feel about Atheist?
Atheist is very fun. I think Atheist is good. I think that Atheist is one of the characters that really is an advanced character. I think you could throw a lot of experimental characters into new players, like the Noble. I think a new player could figure out the Noble pretty quickly and play with it. But Atheist quite literally breaks all of the rules of Clocktower. And I think that you should have a good grasp on the rules of Clocktower before you break them. So I think it's definitely a character that only works with experienced players. And I think that there are scripts where Atheist is more interesting. I've written a couple scripts with the Atheist, and I tend to have a lot of room for what I can simulate. I love having a pit hag where I can wake people up and change their abilities. I love because you're trying to simulate as a storyteller that it's a real game. So if you're able to wake a player up and tell them their Serenovus mad or tell them that their ability has changed, that goes a long way versus them guessing, was I poisoned last night? More silent minions. I also think it's very fun with the Vizier because I can wake up town and tell them that the Atheist is a Vizier.
I agree with
Um,
that.
so I like putting the Atheist in scripts that have a lot of room for outward information, a lot of room for confirmation that could be false. And I think that the best thing to remember about the Atheist, especially as a storyteller who's been the Atheist, I don't know what the wording is I've had players think that my goal is to win. That the goal of me putting Atheist in the bag is for me to trick them. The goal is to make a fun game that is enjoyable, and when you put it together, you feel proud and you feel together as a town. It's the only character that I can think of where at the end of the game, when you win, every single person in town is happy. There's nobody with hard feelings. There's nobody, thinking, oh, I could have played that differently and I would have won. No, I put Atheist in the game so that everyone can win. I'll simulate for a few days, and then I'll throw things in there to give some hints, because the goal is not for me to win. The goal is for me to have fun. So the Atheist, if used correctly, is a goal to give experienced players a new way to play, and new ways for the whole town to win together and have a good time.
Excellent. So, how do you feel about Heretic?
I don't like playing with the Heretic. I think that it's an interesting character. I am glad it exists. I'm glad all characters in Clocktower exist, because if I don't like them, I can play 1,000 games and never play with them once. That's part of the joy of the game. But if other people find it exciting or engaging, nothing stopping them from playing scripts with it heavily featured. I think the problem for me is I like knowing my win conditions. I like knowing that what I'm doing is actually benefiting me. If I'm the demon in a heretic game and I've spent the whole game trying to convince town that I am good, and then I lose the game because I have done a good job at what I was trying to do, that doesn't feel great for me. So it's not one that I like playing with particularly.
Fair enough. All right, one last character to discuss here. How do you feel about Legion?
Legion is fun. I like being Legion specifically. You can bluff almost anything and probably not double claim a good player, but probably will end up double claiming another Legion. I think that it's an interesting character because it's one where it lets me die and not feel upset about it. Like I said, I like to live far in the game, but if I'm the second Legion dead, that's fine because I know I've got 7 others to carry the torch. As a good player, I think that Legion is interesting. It Legion is a character that when you put it on a script, it really changes how the game is discussed. There are a few characters like that. Heretic is one like that. When Heretic is on the script, it is going to come up in the game. Legion is very much the same. In any script where there's Legion on it, you'll hear discussion of, does this feel like a Legion game? I've heard a lot of double claims. I've heard a lot of shifting claims, things like that. So I think that can be a double-edged sword for some people. I think that if that is a discussion that you find interesting, I think that it adds an extra layer to, instead of trying to figure out who is lying to you, you have to figure out who isn't. But for some people who like the game how it is and discussion how it is, it might be overpowering to play in a Legion script because a lot of the conversation can become, is this Legion or not? And then maybe you're not discussing your information as much. Maybe there's less of a puzzle to piece together. So it's kind of hit or miss. If it's a playstyle you like, I think that it works quite well. But I understand why some people like looking for the minority that's against them, not looking for the majority that's against them.
All right, well, one final question, and you can interpret this question however you would like. So, looking at this script here, what character would you like to be in real life?
Ooh, what character would I like to be in real life? So, we mentioned the script at the beginning. The script is the ones you least expect. It was created by Sam and me, which was really cool. For anyone who doesn't know, me and Sam have been a bit of a duo in this game for a little bit. We ran a stream together for a while, and we've both talked about script writing with each other for a while, but we never actually sat down and made one. So this was our first attempt at that. To make the summoner script, just for a bit of background on why I chose this one. I thought it was fitting.
And I think it's the first script I co-wrote with anybody at all.
Yeah, me too. And spoiler alerts, some people like it. It's it's done well, which makes me happy. What do I want to be in real life? There are some answers that are just real jobs. I could go and be a philosopher. That's fine. I could do that. I could go and be an artist. I am an artist. So that could be an easy answer. There's some more fun ones like Pixie. Would that make me a teddy bear like the icon, or would I be like a fairy? I'm kind of interested in both. Those are both interesting options. I think that uh, I think that honestly, Summoner is such a cool character and cool name. Like I get to create life. That'd be kind of cool. It's kind of like a Frankenstein character. I get to figure out who I want to be ride or die with me, and I can create them as I wish. So I'm gonna be the summoner.
That's fun. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we go, is there anything you'd like to plug?
So the only thing I would really like to plug is my scripts. I mentioned a couple times I am a script writer. It's something I'm quite passionate about, and I am quite proud of the scripts I've made. So if you go to botcscripts.com, there is a handy filter there where you can put in the name of the author. My name is Taylor. So if you go to that website and search Taylor, you'll see a bunch of scripts that I've made. Some of them I'm very proud of. So next time you are looking for a custom script and don't know what to play, think of Tay.
Excellent. All right. Well, Taylor, thank you for joining us this week.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a
All
blast.
right. Well, this has been Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. Join us next week and we'll have another guest. See you then.